currently I'm a software engineer at Fleet Device Management, where we're doing endpoint telemetry, MDM, for corporate laptops, mobile devices, things like that. So this is a scene from Groundhog, a 1993 movie, where the main character is caught in a time loop. And I felt like I was living in a Groundhog Day a few years ago. I was a tech lead at a large company working on a project that depended on another upstream engineering team. And every week we'd have a meeting with the two teams. And every week I'd be asking the same question, trying to keep my tone professional. Hey, Alex, how's that component going that we need from your team? And every week, Alex would say something like, oh, yeah, I meant to get to that, but I got pulled into something else. I'll try again next week. So first, I gave it the benefit of the doubt. You know, stuff happens, priorities shift, but then it kept happening. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, same story, no progress, no accountability, no one stepping in. So I was boiling inside. I kept thinking, why is no one telling Alex to work on this? Where is the project manager? Who is making the call on what really matters here? Now, we did have a roadmap, but it didn't seem like people took it seriously. When something didn't get done, it just kind of quietly disappeared from the plan. Deadlines slipped, commitments evaporated. Meanwhile, I still had to face my boss with another non-update. So this frustration kind of started eating at me. I'd sit in those meetings and I'd end up thinking all kinds of dark thoughts about Alex, about myself, about the company. And this situation wasn't just a few bad weeks. It kept happening in different iterations year after year. It was years of pretending everything was fine when it wasn't, years of wondering if this is just how companies worked. And I'd go home exhausted, not from the actual work, but from the sheer weight of this organizational dysfunction. And yes, part of the problem was that I myself was jumping to a bad conclusion. But let's dive in to understand the full extent of this priority confusion problem here. So in many organizations, engineers don't know why their work matters or how it fits into the bigger picture of the organization. Sometimes engineers get vague information like, we have a customer that wants this, but which customer exactly? Like, what is their exact use case, and how bad do they really want it? Do they want it really badly, or was it just an idea a sales guy threw out and the customer said something non-committal like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea? Some other examples of vague directives include make it reliable, make it faster, we need dashboards, or the current popular feature, add AI. So in addition, at many organizations, engineers don't know how to prioritize one task over another. And engineers are smart people, and they tend to optimize locally, like making a service that has full test coverage with complete telemetry instrumentation, with great error messages, instead of optimizing globally, right? Shipping the thing that actually unlocks revenue. So here's a few examples of activities that unlock revenue. Helping a large customer bring up your product, or quickly fixing issues for a customer that we're trying to expand the contract with. Or if there's a customer that had repeated infra issues, trying to pay closer attention to those issues. And as you notice, these examples are kind of customer focused. The point there is that there's a link to the company either making more revenue or at least preventing the loss of revenue. So the third problem is that many organizations, engineers don't know the priority of the work other teams are doing. So let's give an extreme case here. You can have a team A and team B, and maybe the team A is doing work that's important, more important than team A. Perhaps all of the work that team B is doing is more important than all of the work that team A is doing. Well, that doesn't make sense, right? Instead of continuing on this path, team A should help out with some of the work for team B, or maybe they can split the work between them. So what about managers? Are they contributing to this transparency problem or helping with the solution? So I used to be a manager years ago, and it was a lot of work. I have great respect for managers. And part of the challenge was getting the information to my direct reports. If I'd sit in a manager's meeting, maybe I missed something. Maybe I was distracted by, my email or something like that. Or if I'm presenting information to my direct reports, what if I presented incorrectly, out of context? Maybe I was missing something. In extreme case, this might turn into a game of telephone where by the time information gets to the actual engineer, it's completely different. This is a great quote, so I'll read it. Efforts and courage are not enough without purpose and direction. And that's what many engineers at these problematic companies are missing: clear purpose and direction. So let's switch gears a little bit with a little dad joke. Why did the software engineer visit this old factory? Because they heard it still ran on assembly. So we're visiting this old factory to talk about kind of the context of engineers and managers and how we got here historically. So let's start with some kind of basic business logic. So businesses want effective output from their engineers, meaning engineers' time should turn into big revenue. This is an old quote, basically saying an engineer can build a solution that costs a lot less than another person can. So engineers' value lies in solving problems with fewer resources. And if you think about software engineers, like as software engineers, we're basically creating value out of almost nothing, right? Just some CPU cycles and some memory. In addition, good engineers don't just write more code, they find the leanest, most effective solution. Engineering work is knowledge work, and it is notoriously hard to measure. Like, yes, we have metrics like number of commits, lines of code, but all of those things have their issues. Can managers measure engineers? Not really, I'd say. They can't sit over every engineer's shoulder and see exactly what they're doing. Managers must trust that their engineers are doing the right thing. Now, managers do have their toolkit, right? There's some management basics that every good manager should have, right? One is one-on-ones. Regularly meet with your direct reports to, get FaceTime, dig into their issues, get status. Then there's the second one is feedback, regularly providing positive or negative feedback to your engineers. And then the third one is trying to kind of grow your engineers with coaching and delegation. And the last one is just status meetings, right? You have your status meetings where everyone on the team can share information. Here's another little dad joke. So are those management basics enough? If an engineer has a good manager and they're working on a story, can they judge that story's impact on the company's bottom line? I'd say maybe, right? What's missing from that manager's toolkit? Why do so many engineers still feel like they don't know what's going on at their own company? So let's move on to some solutions and talk at least how my company, Fleet, is trying to solve these problems. So the first problem is there's a missing transparent link between individual work and business impact. So, just like in Jerry Maguire, engineering leaders have to show engineers the money. I'm talking about business money here. How does the business make money? So at my company, Fleet, we try to make all these prioritization artifacts available to everyone. So I'm talking about things like which features we have committed to which customers by which dates. So these are contractual obligations. Then how big are the customers, how much money they're paying us, as well as how much money can they potentially pay us if they expand their services with us. Which bugs are impacting which customers, and exactly how many bugs does each customer have. And then perhaps we have prospects, and we're trying to build features for those prospects, trying to turn them into customers. Here's an example artifact. So here's a roadmap board. So we have like our releases here, and it goes up and down. This is just a snapshot. So this is a kind of a rough idea of what we're planning to design and ship over the next several weeks. And these are mainly based on customer commitments and strategic priorities. So we have things like this. Roadmap boards, we have spreadsheets, we have usage metrics that we're getting from customers, and we also give our engineers access to Salesforce for customer details. We also continually gather feedback, like internally, whether it's with skip level meetings or retrospectives, to make sure like all engineers are aligned on the same page regarding company priorities. And then we tweak things, if they're not working. For example, like this roadmap board, this is just kind of been here for a couple months, so it's kind of recent. So we're tweaking stuff as if things don't work, we kind of try to something else, make sure we stay transparent. All right, let's talk about the second problem. So sometimes there's no visibility into the priorities of other or work of other teams. So oftentimes in companies, functional areas are in their little silos. So at Fleet, each product group has a dedicated board. So everyone can go to that team's board and see like what they're working on that sprint, whether they're overloaded, whether things are behind. They also have another board with their backlog, so everyone can see the backlog and see if that team won't be able to take on new work. So one of the values at Fleet is to have short toes. So that means being less sensitive and less territorial about your work. That means being able to grab work from others and letting others, grab work from your functional area. So I like it because it effectively makes us all entrepreneurs in the sense that we are able to work on the most important thing for the business. And it's really the key point for me is that, when I'm coding, when I'm doing some work for my company, I want to work on the most important thing. And I want to know for sure that that is really the most important thing for the company. This also kind of creates an expectation that others will help out and jump in because there's this transparency. They're able to see that, maybe I'm working on something important, but I need help. Okay, let's talk about the last problem. At many companies, the decisions about priorities, trade-offs, and cross-team alignment are kind of opaque. And engineers must rely on filtered communication through their managers. So in reference to this quote, I've had plenty of bad managers in my career, and I'd say each of them was bad in their own way. What if I got a manager who is not a good communicator? And if you think about it, it's actually pretty common for a software engineer who gets promoted to a manager to maybe not be that great at communication. So then the company has a sort of inconsistency issues about how information gets passed down from management down to their engineers. So one of the most favorite things about my company is that almost all of our regularly scheduled meetings are recorded that anyone can watch. So this includes like status meetings, most customer calls, and even the CEO's staff meeting. And my favorite way to consume this information is I go to the gym, I jump on the elliptical machine, and I queue up a few meetings to watch, and I watch them sped up, which also means that I may actually want to skip a meeting because I know I can watch it faster later. And then if I want to watch another meeting, sometimes I have to like keep going on the elliptical machine. So it's a sort of a type of habit stacking. But that means even if I'm unlucky to get a manager who's not the greatest communicator, I'm still able to know what's going on at my company. This also means that sometimes I actually know more than my manager knows about the reason we're doing things at the company, because my manager and I may be watching or attending different meetings. It's also great for recruiting. Like how many engineers can say they know exactly what was discussed at the last CEO staff meeting. And things discussed could include OKRs, objectives and key results, how they're going for this quarter, what we're trying to prioritize for next quarter, or KPIs, key performance indicators. And both OKRs and KPIs get reported up to the board of directors. So effectively, that means engineers are able to see, what they're working on, what the priority CEO is discussing, and all the way up to the board of directors. Okay, so I wouldn't be completely transparent if I didn't mention a few of the factors that are kind of helping our company to be perhaps more transparent, internally transparent than other companies. So we are open source, and we're built on another open source product. So we have kind of an open source foundation, and we're trying to model a lot of our processes on GitLab, which is another transparent company, large publicly traded transparent company. We're also fully remote, so that means there's a focus on processes and giving ability to individuals to make decisions and do work on their own, because we may be in different time zones, right? And we need to trust that our people are going to do the right thing for the company. We're also kind of public by default, and this is kind of a business/marketing decision for how we're positioning ourselves to our customers. So that means any documentation or artifacts that we release to the public should be public unless there is a good reason for them not to be. So for example, I'm working like on a research, on Spike Story, doing some technical research. So the result of my research, I should make public unless there's a reason not to. So since we expect this kind of openness from our employees, we're basically asking our employees, hey, make your work visible to the world. It's only fair that the leadership and the company is just as open internally in return. So I'll mention a few of transparency challenges that we have. So first of all, we have hours of recorded content, shared Slack, internal documents being updated, public documents being updated, GitHub issues, etc. And people's inability to deal with this fire hose of information can lead to burnout. So we've actually seen it. Secondly, people tend to give answers or act in ways that they think are more socially acceptable or desirable in public situations such as recorded meetings. Now, from one end, it is good because people tend to be nicer and more empathetic, but then on the other hand, maybe they feel like they can't be themselves. So we do have one-on-one meetings and skip levels that are not recorded, where people can kind of air their grievances. So we also have lots of documentation, and sometimes documentation is behind actual practices. So we try to reward and recognize people who are updating our documentation. We have a thanks channel in Slack where people can often thank others for updating documentation. All right, so let's start to wrap things up. So if a company doesn't value transparency and keeps their engineers in the dark, then engineers may end up working on things that are wrong, that don't bring value to the company. So the problem at my old company wasn't Alex. He wasn't slacking off. He was overwhelmed, just like the rest of us. Everyone was acting on noise instead of following the signal. No one had the authority or clarity to say what actually mattered. This wasn't just a communication problem. This was a trust and transparency problem. And the absence of that transparency created a frustrating, demoralizing fog. Everyone thought they were doing the right thing, but nothing important seemed to move forward. So this experience changed my understanding of leadership. Because here's the truth. Without shared visibility and shared accountability, even the best engineers will lose direction. And polite status meetings won't save you from a broken system. So as leaders, our job isn't just to set direction, it's to make the invisible visible so that everyone's aligned. So people have asked me, my company is not very transparent, but I'd like to be more transparent. What can I do? So I'll give some kind of grassroots type advice. So as first step, you should be aligned with your manager, right? To a certain degree, your manager has to agree that a certain level of transparency is important, which means you need to know your manager's priorities, which means kind of knowing what your manager knows. So I personally strive to know about 90% of what my manager knows. But how do you get there? Well, ideally, you would have recorded meetings like us, but if not, you could ask if key meetings could be recorded. What if they can't? Well, perhaps those meetings have notes, and you can read those notes. If not, maybe you can suggest that they use an AI note taker. AI note takers have gotten pretty good lately. What if you can't get there? Well, then definitely have a weekly one-on-one with your manager. You need to kind of know what are the key meetings your manager is attending, key meetings being the ones with the largest signal-to-noise ratio, and then ask your manager about what was discussed at those meetings. And then once you're aligned with your manager, try to repeat that with your manager's managers, but maybe at a scaled down version. I think it's reasonable to meet with your manager's managers once a month, but maybe you can do it as often as every 2 weeks. And then most importantly, kind of share what you're doing with others in your company. So you begin to build this kind of a grassroots transparency movement. All right, so that concludes my presentation. I have some links about my company. We are open source, we are hiring, and you can connect with me at LinkedIn. Thank you, everyone.